Good, good. Well, good afternoon. This panel kind of is a continuation of the discussion that was started in Salon A earlier in the prior 45 minutes, which had to do with delivering content in a multi-device world and dealing with the technical challenges and solutions. So you'll see at least one familiar face on the panel. But what we're going to focus on here is how to succeed with OTT in terms of tackling the business strategy, how to make the R and the ROI work for OTT businesses, and there's a whole flavor of them. Before I get to having our panelists introduce themselves, I just want to kind of say a few things about OTT. I think if we asked everyone here, we'd probably all have varying definitions on what OTT actually means, and usually that relates to how long you've been in the industry as well, because the original definition of OTT to kind of how it's used in many different ways in 2016 can be confusing. So I'm just going to put out there the way we think about it at Brightcove. And by introduction, I run the global media business for Brightcove. I'm based out of Tempe. Our headquarters is Boston. And most of the time, a lot of us are on planes because we have customers in 75 countries around the world. So we get to deal with OTT across media companies of all types, which is very exciting. But for us, when we talk about OTT, what we're really referring to is delivering premium content direct to consumers across a multitude of platforms, independent of any specific carriage or rights deal that prevents the content owner from actually directly engaging with the consumer. But you will hear people say things like, oh, we want to deliver to the OTT devices, and by which they mean usually the streaming boxes or the smart TVs that all relate to kind of a lean-back experience where they're watching content on the big screen at home. But of course, why would OTT not include mobile, right? Or tablet viewing? So you'll hear a number of terms. I encourage you to look carefully at whatever reports or articles you're reading and kind of dig in deeper. The great news is that there's a lot of experimentation going on. We've had a range of successes and many failures along the way. We were joking about this as we were walking over. We call this how to succeed with OTT because obviously you don't want to call it how to fail at OTT. Although as part of our discussion around what it takes to success, hopefully we'll highlight some of the things that haven't worked along the way. And with that, just I'll let everyone introduce themselves, but I want to kind of point out that we have Ben from Sinclair Digital, we have Titus from RLJ Entertainment, and of course the flagship brand over there is Acorn TV. We have Jared from Machinima, and we're happy to have Nathan from Condé Nast Entertainment. And it just so happened that this worked out perfectly, right? Where we have representatives from broadcasters, publishers, pure play digital OTT, SVOD services, niche content, and then an MCN as well. So it really gives us a perspective. So I'm very excited about that. So what I'm going to do is we'll start, Nathan, perhaps with you, and just quick introduction, what your role and scope of responsibility is, and then maybe 30 seconds on what your company or business is doing with OTT, and then we'll dive into some Q&A.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my name is Nathan Guerra. I am the head of product and technology for Condé Nast Entertainment. Condé Nast Entertainment is the video arm for Condé Nast. We are a next generation production studio for the brands that we have, from Wired, Ars Technica, Vanity Fair, or The New Yorker. We produce approximately 4,000 digital shorts per year. We produced as well TV series for the like of Netflix with our last TV series called Last Chance U. And we also do a few movies a year. And on OTT, we have one app currently called The Scene, which we have on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, and, if I'm not mistaken, Xbox One.
Great. Jared Reeves, nice to be here. I run our OTT international business. So I manage the day-to-day operations and programming, as well as negotiating and sourcing and closing deals, so a little bit of business development as well. Machinima is a 10-year-old company. It was the first MCN on YouTube. Today we do about 4 billion video views a month. and reach about 150 million uniques across 109 countries. Now, most of that's on YouTube and Facebook, but it's been a big initiative of the company over the past 18 months is to move as much audience from YouTube to these other platforms. YouTube doesn't monetize as well as everybody thinks it does. So what we're really focused on doing is taking the 100,000 hours a month that our collective talent network creates and sourcing the best of the best, and then moving it up the monetization funnel into more kind of traditional SVOD models or exclusive licensing deals.
My name is Titus Bicknell. I'm the CDO at RLJ Entertainment. The easiest way to describe what I do is I joined the company 3 years ago and was tasked with replacing the contribution to EBITDA of our diminishing physical business with digital EBITDA. And the reason I put it in those terms is obviously the physical business and broadcast rights are a very high revenue business, but with much higher costs. And the real key and interest in the digital business for a lot of companies as they move into it is that it's a much higher margin business. So you don't need as much revenue to make as much margin. And so the trick with that is working out which bits of the digital landscape and which bits of the OTT opportunity provide you with your best margin opportunity.
I'm Ben Miller. I'm a VP of Digital Product Development at Sinclair Digital, which is the digital arm of Sinclair Broadcast Group. Sinclair is America's largest television broadcaster, own about 200 television stations across the country, plus cable stations as well. And so we're into pretty much every type of content imaginable. And over the last 2 years, I've been responsible for standing up a team in digital that is responsible for very much the same mission as yourself. It's moving, addressing digital audiences in the same way that we do on the broadcast side, moving audiences or following audiences to digital, realizing the economies of scale, but also the reduced production costs and the reduced distribution costs on the digital side, and trying to create revenue. And now that entails moving to all the various channels, wherever they be, so that we go direct to digital for much of our content distribution and not just solely to broadcast. And so that's the mix. We build a ton of different products, work across every channel, and that's the mission at Sinclair Digital.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. You know, just to start off, I know we went through kind of a series of questions and talking points that we might want to cover today. I'm just going to kind of float with the conversation depending on, you know, where we go in the dialogue. What I'd say is, you know, feel free to make observations not only about your OTT business, right? So speak obviously from your perspective and experience, but also comment on those things you've seen, because obviously you're vigilant in the industry. You guys are looking at everything. And I think you'd, you know, be appreciated by the audience that if you can, you know, kind of lend your lens, if you will, to what you're seeing in the marketplace. With that, you know, I gave kind of this definition of OTT as we sit at Brightcove. I'd love to kind of get a sense of how your company or you and your division think about OTT, and then speak to what was the driving factor behind launching an OTT or one or more OTT initiatives. So Jared, maybe we start with you. I think you spoke to this a little bit in your intro already.
Yeah, I guess you know, we're a little bit more. We started on OTT. You know, YouTube is OTT to me. Anything that's not delivered via cable or satellite, we deem as OTT, and it's less regulated, so I don't have to deal with as thick of contracts. You know, and I mentioned earlier, what we're really trying to do is take our content and move it up the monetization funnel. You know, the audience is there for us. The audience isn't the problem. It's really the monetization. So figuring out how to channel, in the United States alone, 25 million people to very specific content on very specific platforms, so we could really achieve the highest ROI on the content that we're making. And then at the same time, serving the audience to where they're consuming the content, which for Machinima and many other MCNs mainly is on YouTube, and now Facebook, and Snapchat is a growing environment for us. But really trying to understand that you can't just take one piece of content and put it everywhere and expect it to to perform the same or to have the same following, it takes a certain amount of promotion and understanding of each individual platform. Which is a challenge at Machinima. We started our Facebook initiative in January this year. We had 1 million views a month before that. Now we're up to 50 million views a month. So it's really about for us kind of just trying to focus with all the millions of platforms that are popping up.
I've got like 8 questions that come out of what you just
Yeah.
said. So let me just dive into one before I turn it over to the rest of the guys. With your content in particular, right? It's very different, right? And so are you taking all those hundreds of thousands of hours of content and then focusing a particular set of content, type of content, format of content for very specific platforms? So that, for instance, obviously with Snapchat you do something different, but when you're thinking about delivering across all their platforms, are you looking at maybe this genre or subgenre of your content, or short form versus long form?
Yeah, no, that's a big focus for us. We're in the business of gaming and kind of that geek and fandom culture. So a lot of the content that our creators are making are gameplay walkthroughs. Minecraft being the most popular. Anybody with kids knows Minecraft in the room. I'll use Comcast Watchable as an example. We launched on them when they launched their platform last September, and we're seeing that as kids are jumping on the platform and parents are turning on that set-top box instead of Netflix to them, Minecraft pops to the top every single month for us. But the challenge, and I think that we face most often, is that a lot of these platforms that we're launching on always have data and reporting somehow at the bottom of their roadmaps, believe it or not. But working with YouTube, we get real-time data, so we're constantly upgrading and changing the program as we see different things coming in. Whereas if you get data 45 days in arrears, it kind of makes it challenging to be as flexible as we're used to. Data is really driving our content investment across all platforms.
Very interesting. Whoever wants to go next on kind of the driving forces or factors behind launching OTT?
Yeah, for us, it's really been about taking a $7 billion media company and transforming it and moving it. And I think that a lot of people look at broadcast television and they look at television in general, and it's easy to look at it from a distance and say, television is over, it's done. It's not, right? It's not going anywhere, actually. It's just shifting. The way it gets delivered is different. How people consume is different. But this is not new. It's changed many, many times. The cable revolution was huge. It changed the entire way that things got distributed. It changed the entire monetary structure of the way the content was distributed and who benefited and how. And this is the same thing over again, right? So I think what I've learned over the last 2 years is that the broadcast industry has been through this before, and they've seen it. And I work with people that were there for those shifts. And so to come in as the digital guy and kind of understand how digital works and how digital has grown, and to get the benefit of that, we see a lot of intersect. We say, look, there are things that we do well as a company. We produce more video, more owned and operated content than anyone on the planet today. 2,200 hours a week of original content. And we produce and we collect probably 50 times that is high quality, heavily produced, expensive to produce, shot in the studio, shot with satellite trucks that never sees the light of day. And when we look at that universe and we say, what if we put that together with a really seamless digital distribution engine that can reach all the audience all the time, wherever they want, in exactly the ways they want, and we could have 5 times the business we have today someday. And so that's the driver. That's the hope. And it's also to say we're going to end up with a blended ecosystem where people consume the content the way they want. And that's what's evolving. We can see it. We can see the trends. All we got to do is lean into our core and just worry about format, worry about how the content gets where it's going, how it's packaged to be tailored to the audience where they are. The massive driver for us is the audience has moved.
Yeah.
If we want to address the whole audience, you can't be on one channel anymore. You have to be on every channel.
That's very prescient, actually, that you guys took that approach. This is the notion of the future of TV is TV, right? which was what, the Michael Wolff, was it Michael Wolff book a year ago?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Where it was this notion of, the revolution is happening, but it's not necessarily the disruption of television to a different business. It is actually the reforming of the existing business as audiences shift.
Yeah, and I think that, it's easy to look at the history of OTT or digital video consumption and get misled because people will consume stuff that is lower quality. They will consume stuff that is shorter form because that's all that was there.
Right.
But as there is stuff that is better quality, that's better delivered, that's a better experience, they're becoming much more discerning very quickly, right? And so you're going to see shakeout. People like Machinima that have this nailed and got it nailed early are in a really good position.
Yeah.
People that are relying on like stuff shot like in a shaky cell phone with poor resolution, they're not going to be around long because the audience wants better. They want higher quality. That's not to say you can't pull something off a cell phone that's just so salient to everyone's kind of needs at that moment that it still plays, but generally the bar is going to keep going up every single quarter, every single month, every single year from now on, and that's the driver, and that's what we do well.
All right, so just because you made that point, Jared, just going back to you, do you agree with that, coming from the MCN perspective?
I will comment on the quality of content because in terms of a production cost, to me, I see kids sitting in front of YouTube for 5 hours a day watching people that are playing video games in front of a green screen. Yeah. So to me, the definition of good content is if somebody's going to watch it. Yeah. And as technology improves every day, the cost of even good production decreases. And the ability and the tools for an individual increases. You said, we'll see that convergence. It's just but to me, good content is whoever's watching it. That's how I think about it.
Titus, let's go to you and RLJ Entertainment and Acorn TV.
Well, I think one point I'd make in light of what Ben has said and what Jared said as well, to Gil Scott Heron's point, the revolution will not be televised, but it will be on demand.
Yeah.
And I think the key piece there is understanding how the strictures of broadcast television and cable regulation and title sticks distribution were all set up, in a sense, to protect consumers. But we're now in a situation where the consumer doesn't care whether this is a cable channel, whether this is satellite, whether this is broadcast. They care about being met where they are with the content they want when they want it. The key piece of that in the world that I live in is that we have an audience at RLJ Entertainment. It's a 20-year-old business. That audience was predominantly served through first-run TV, either in the UK or, if we were lucky, PBS, and then a paper-based catalog, literally something like this, arriving through their mailboxes several times a year, from which they could order VHS originally, then DVD, and now Blu-ray versions of that content. So this is an audience who is passionate about a certain genre and type of content. I won't use the word quality because it's too pejorative in a sense to the notion that American television is not high quality. It is. It's just very different from the British content that these people are interested in getting. For a long time, the only way they could get it was if they waited for the catalog, if they put in an order in the mail, if they waited for a box to arrive with DVDs or VHS or Blu-rays. So the recognition for us was these people are there, they are passionate about a certain genre. We just need to make it easier for them to get it quicker, sooner, cheaper, because they've demonstrated time and time again that they are loyal and they are here for us. And so the entire driver there was about saying, okay, SVOD actually provides us with an enormous way of increasing our ability to reach the audience we already have, and then potentially grow it to audiences we did not have, because this is a very strange way to shop for anybody who's under 40.
So that makes a lot of sense, Titus, and I know you and I have talked about this for a couple of years now at least. But every time we have this conversation, there's more to learn. Was the motivation then primarily making, satisfying the demand and the needs of your existing loyal customer base who just had the inconvenience of access primarily as the number one motivation, and then expanding the market thereafter?
So I think to be completely candid, we were recognizing that our audience was dying, literally.
Yeah.
And the format, the medium was the issue, not the message. But we recognize that the easiest way of building something new is to start with what you know, with the audience you know, and ensure, because you're metrics-based, that the product you're offering them is something they want. It's very hard to say, oh, British television, how do we sell that to somebody who's 25 and has never seen a DVD player? It's not an easy proposition, but if you've got a mailing list, you've got an audience who understands a medium and what that incredibly painful process they go through gets them as an end result, you can introduce them to it. What was interesting for us was these are people for whom the term smart television didn't mean anything. By definition, they all had stupid TVs because they bought their TV and they were like, why would I ever want to upgrade it? It's worked for the last 15 years. And so one of the things we did to recognize the fact that that technology gap was going to be a challenge was we sold Roku Sticks. Originally, they weren't the sticks, they were the boxes, in the catalog. So what you were buying was a piece of technology that made your stupid television a smart television. And by the way, it had a membership to our service as part of what you were buying. So it commoditized in something that was familiar, a very, very new concept. What we've also benefited from enormously is what we would refer to as the child upgrade or grandchild upgrade, which is those parents or grandparents are connected to our new world, our new digital way of consuming content, by their interested children and grandchildren who want to see their grandparents get on board with this.
Very interesting. You know, the bundling of the Roku device is really interesting in terms of acquisition for a particular market. We, just an aside, we have a customer in Thailand that has a studio, you know, an SVOD service design. Well, it's primarily SVOD service, some transactional video on demand as well, called Primetime Entertainment, focused on taking studio licensed content, primarily from Hollywood, and then presenting it to the Thai market. Some of their key components of their value add is having certain exclusivities, but then also doing really accurate subtitling. So they pride themselves on, you know, the team they have that goes in and subtitles all these movies. And we talked about this. This is, you know, you need 50 people working day and night to do this for all the content. But what was interesting is because their market was ill-prepared for massive adoption, they partnered with the declining DVD stores, you know, the rental stores, and actually put kiosks in each of those stores across the country where they had an experience set up, a television with a number of different devices on which you could actually get the service, and, you know, kind of audiophile headphones so that everyone could go in and experience this on-demand streaming product, which is the way they drove adoption. So with that, Nathan, from the publisher perspective, again, very different than everyone else here. Talk to me about the driving factors behind OTT offerings and getting into video, I guess, is part of it, right?
I think one of the key reasons was we wanted to have a direct access to our consumers first, and we wanted to make sure that we created basically a hub where we could have all of our premium content into one place. What's interesting, as you said, is, you know, we have different caps. So we are also, you know, providing content to the Netflix, and we also do see, you know, some different patterns of usage depending on the platform. So clearly for us, which, you know, is we are, you know, let's say the bulk of our production is going to be about short form videos. We do see, you know, very high adoption when it comes to mobile platforms, and when it comes to long form, we do see that, you know, way more on OTT platforms, well, TV-led platforms. So we already do see those two, you know, big trends when it comes to OTT, and it makes it quite, I would say, more difficult when you have this kind of, you know, dichotomy between those two types of content, because it's a different audience that's going to engage, sometimes with longer form content. It's not the same. It's definitely not the same way of consuming content. So we, right now, you know, are completely rethinking our OTT strategy around those lines and trying to, you know, create the right product for the TV-based audience, and one which is more, you know, for mobile consumption.
when we talk about mobile, you're thinking like snackable content
Correct.
designed for short
Yeah.
consumption.
Mobile, I mean, for us, when you look at the number of video views per user on tablets and mobile phones, when it comes to short form, it's, you do see way more than 2 videos per user when they're, inside your app.
Yeah.
But when it comes to TV, well, they're trying to find something that can, at least last for a good 15 minutes.
Yeah, right.
Before, they jump to something else. So it's a completely different way of, creating this product. And you can see it, in my last role when I was at Samsung, I could totally see, the pattern as well. On TV, on smart TV, connected TVs, the winners were all long-form providers, whether it was Netflix, whether it was the BBC iPlayer, or the catch-up services back in Europe. So for me, it's quite clear. I think trying to provide an OTT service, except if you're YouTube and you have everything, very big catalog, and you can reorder it, is difficult. And I'm sure if Netflix would release some numbers that people watching Netflix on the iPhone, it's not going to be that big. Still, if you look at Netflix, I started to see some short forms videos joining getting into the catalog. So we may see some evolution there as well.
That would be really interesting data. I will tell you that when it comes to binge watching a television show, you get enamored of the content, and so you're willing to go to the smaller screen just to keep going. I did this very recently, I must admit. It might have been last night. But you're right. I won't sit there and watch a feature-length film. While you're switching mics, let me go ahead and have you continue since we got to you last on this. Let's shift the conversation towards more business model, right? Because in the end, this is about how do we generate revenue, how do we unlock the revenue of the content and OTT experiences, how do we actually get a positive ROI on the investments we're making. So what is the business model that you're employing? Does it differ between the short form and the long form?
Right now, I would say the bulk of our business is advertising based. So that's what we do as a publisher. This is where we have the most experience. And yeah, so right now it's only advertising based, everything we do.
Are you finding that it's actually trending, whether or not it's
there is
complete?
demand. There's demand. There's demand for
okay.
big time. I think right now, I was looking this morning to Twitter saying that video was representing a big part of their revenue mix right now. And yes, clearly in the US market there is a big demand for video advertising. So the more platform, the bigger the audience you have, the bigger time you have, spent you have. You won't have, I would say, a big issue as long as you have the audience and the content.
So you spoke about this dichotomy you have between the short form, mobile focused content and the long form, lean back experience content. Do you find that supporting both with an ad supported model is, are they equivalent in the sense of I know the size is different, but in terms of the ease of,
for us, when we're talking about long form, would be really, around 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So we're not even talking, an hour.
An hour.
When it goes to, I would say, where the example that we have when we go for an hour, we sell it.
Yeah.
So to the likes of Netflix or Amazon Video, as a pure package content.
Yeah.
To them.
License deal.
Yeah. To license deal. So right now, the only example I can give you is really, I would say, on the 15 minutes max.
Yeah. Okay.
Or
So mid form.
Exactly. Let's call it mid form.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Got it. Jared, business models.
Yeah, right now, the majority of our revenue is driven AVOD. We have such scale on YouTube that it's, in terms of percent of total, it's tough to overcome that. But, our goal is really to move into a more traditional licensing and SVOD model. So earlier this year, we launched an SVOD service, and we've been working on getting just non-exclusive distribution here in the United States on that. We don't operate any direct-to-consumer apps ourselves, so we're working on other people's platforms. But we have such engagement on YouTube. We thought it would be very easy to just pop up an SVOD on Amazon and tell everybody to go there and watch the content. And it turns out it takes a little bit more than that to get people off the platforms that they're consuming on. So in the short term, we're really focusing on just getting that shelf space because I think only so many platforms are going to end up winning at the end of the day, and that shelf space is going to get a lot smaller and a lot more valuable. And pretty soon people are going to start paying to be on there as opposed to people paying us to be on there. So there's that, and then licensing is the other big thing that we're interested in. You know, you and I were talking about this earlier. You know, we're a digital company. We want to be in the business of selling television shows to broadcast companies and Netflix, and you know, and everybody else wants to be in the business of launching OTT platforms and making short form digital. So you know, both parties are trying to get to the same spot, but you know, the margins and the money is just so much bigger still in the traditional landscape. That's really, at least right now, what our focus is as the AVOD business still is in infancy in terms of ROI.
Interesting. So the service you launched earlier this year, that was SVOD, was that a linear service?
No, it's a digital VOD service.
It's still VOD.
Yeah,
okay.
and we're using kind of just a traditional first window model there.
Okay.
So we'll take stuff that we're making out of our studio, we'll combine that with super curated content from the network, and we'll serve that up into one spot to the consumer on a 30-day first window basis. You know, and I've seen a lot of other people, at least in the MCN space. Rooster Teeth is probably the best example of. I mean, they have a 24-hour window, and they're getting hundreds of thousands of people to pay $5.99 a month just for a 24-hour window.
Wow.
And you know, that's kind of how passionate the audience can be around some of these genres. So if we can continue to super serve that specific audience or that specific person that we're going after, you know, they'll pay for it. Even though they're used to just getting their videos on YouTube. There are examples.
Do you think it's a scalable business, especially with what happened to Vessel recently?
Well, we did have a deal with Vessel, and so we're not doing that anymore. But
no, but it's true. I mean, we're talking about small niches at the end of the day. Can you scale?
No,
this business?
I mean the reason Vessel came to us is because we have
The
massive
content,
audience, and just like we thought we could just move audience anywhere, they thought we'll put machinima content on that platform, and it's magically going to appear there without any sort of marketing initiative or any promotion. So what we've really found out, especially this year, that marketing and promotion and merchandising on these new platforms that are popping up are almost as important as the content that we're making.
Yeah. Good. Just real quick, I'm trying to recall, weren't you guys also part of Sling TV, Skinny Bundle?
No.
No, you weren't. Okay.
Not
All right.
so, Maker was.
Maker was.
Yeah.
Okay. And was that a linear service they were doing?
Maker service was just a VOD only service.
It was only
VOD. They launched
VOD.
with Maker and they launched with Polaris, which is their gaming vertical.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So interesting comments about the marketing, the promotion, and merchandising. We were talking about different distribution channels that you need to get to for Acorn TV and some of the other brands. You want to speak to that a bit, Titus?
Sure. I think the key piece for our OTT initiative is that as an organization, we do represent all of the windows. And the traditional model, as you all know, is you look, first of all, for a broadcast partner. They pay the lion's share, but also they help your marketing initiative. They get awareness of your show so that when you have either a digital or a physical window, people know what they're buying when they find it in the stores. What we found very interesting was that as PBS, which was the go-to place in this country for British content for so long, became less and less interested in broadcasting anything other than Downton Abbey, it became more and more difficult for us to follow that traditional model. And so what we found happening was we could use Acorn TV as a first window premiere slot to actually say, this is now being premiered in the US, which then allows us to trigger EST physical windows, but also then go back to a broadcaster who may not have been in the traditional PBS space and say, by the way, there is an audience for it. We can quantify that audience because digital is much more easily metrics-based, and we can show you that if you now show it on TV, you'll have an audience for it. And this is particularly important for episodic content, where a lot of the episodic value is when you get to seasons 3, seasons 4, seasons 5, because what you do when you release season 3 is you get a lot of interest growing for people to go back to the beginning. They can't see episodes 1 through 40 unless they buy it somewhere. So, DVD box sets are still a huge deal in our world. What's the equivalent? It's binge watching on SVOD. So a lot of it was about being flexible with the windowing strategy and not assuming, as it were, a long tail model where your broadcast window paid for most of it and then you hope to collect gravy all the way along. It's what we're beginning to think of as a long body model, where each window has much more even advantage or even responsibility for that ROI, but we might completely change the order or sequence in which we do it depending on the content. What's also interesting is the cable industry is as big as it is and as successful it is because it sells everything twice. It's selling advertising on content that it is also getting subs money for, and it's telling the advertisers, hey, this is going to be great advertising because of look at how many subs we have. So that's been a phenomenally powerful and successful model. The challenge for anybody who's only selling it once is how do you essentially make that incremental? And what we're finding is still a very interesting way of doing that in the pure OTT space is we say, okay, we'll do a first run window on our own OTT service, but then we will also do third-party SVOD rights to Netflix, to Amazon, to other parties who are interested in how a successful show in our niche space could actually bring their audience value as well. So there is this notion of being able to sell something twice, providing you get the slots right.
Do you find that in that latter example that you're cannibalizing any of your user base? Is that a concern?
What's interesting is that the more research we do into our existing audience, the more we see that somebody who has Acorn TV will also have Netflix, for example. Mm-hmm. So the logical answer says if we were cannibalizing our audience, the consumers we have would not have Netflix. The consumers with Netflix would no longer be our consumers, and so we wouldn't be polling them. We see actually over time an increased overlap between the two services, which says to us they need Netflix because they see that it represents the widest possible access to content in lots of genres they're interested in, but they do not feel that that service, even with this third-party SVOD licensing that we do with them, satisfies their entire need or interest in this niche space, and so they do add-on niche. And our feeling is that as long as the price point for that add-on niche is right, and what right is still a very big question, sure, is you will not see people say, I'm going to do Netflix, or they're going to say, I'm going to do Netflix and. And the question then for everybody in this room and beyond is how many ands will they do if their belief is that Netflix is going to give them the bulk of what they want? What are they also going to add?
Just real quick, so that, for the benefit of everyone here, to the extent you can share, could you, well, obviously you can share the pricing. Can you articulate the pricing for your subscribers, but then give a sense of, where you're at in terms of growth? So, obviously I know that Acorn TV is very successful, but I think it's a great, indicator of the potential that you have in OTT.
Absolutely. So I joined on the 1st of January 2014, so almost 3 years ago. We had about 47,000 subscribers, and we were charging them $2.99. In the middle of 2015, we upped the price to $4.99, which is where we still are. And as of this week, we crossed 400,000 subscribers.
So you guys can do the math. That's a pretty healthy business.
I have one question, though.
Just
one on particular Acorn TV, and maybe that will answer that. But did you see a significant uptake since you guys joined Amazon Video?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, which I'll... as of January 1 of this, as of December 14th of last year, we were also available as part of Amazon TV's add-on service. Same service, so exactly the same content, exactly the same price point, except as an Amazon customer, you had to be an Amazon Prime customer. So the argument there is, well, okay, you're giving me access to something I can get directly, but I have to pay $89 or $99, whatever it is now, before I can get it from you as well. In real terms, the native growth of our platform, so that is to say growth of our sub numbers without Amazon, has only dropped by about 10%. So that is to say we're only growing 10% less quickly than we were before Amazon joined us. Amazon has contributed significantly to our overall visibility, but what we're finding most interesting is in addition to the subs they're bringing us, they're also bringing us enormous awareness. And so part of the argument for us as a niche is, how big is our addressable audience? We don't know if our audience even knows we're there. Well, if you see it on the front page of Amazon every time you shop, chances are you'll know now about it. What we do see is people find it on Amazon and then come and sign up with us natively. So it's been a very interesting way of expanding our ecosystem and our available audience.
They have the best promotion on Amazon I've seen. If I can get, it's right after Showtime and Starz. So you see Homeland, and then you see Star Wars, and then you see you
Doc
guys.
Martin.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. Ben, I'm just going to let you speak to business models real quick and then go to questions. I know we have some in the audience.
Yeah, I think, what's interesting about, being in the broadcast space and being in digital is really the broad part, right? So we hit a broad audience. In order to hit a broad audience, you need a broad product offering. You need to be everywhere where the audience is. And so when we look at OTT, step one, you have to have audience. Step two, you have to have an engaged audience. And then step three, you make money with that audience. And so we see all aspects of this in the business that we run. And it's really about the tiers of the advertising revenue. So, there's what we call remnant or backfill advertising. That's there. We can set our watch by it. It happens. It's reasonable. On the video side, it's actually pretty good and growing, particularly with programmatic. Then there's, direct sales, to heavy run clients, particularly at the local level where the advertising money is very, very good because we're hitting a niche audience again. And I think that in the middle is sort of these distributing deals where we push our content out. There's a middleman in between. We're getting advertising money, but it's getting carved into, and that is exactly the funnel that you've talked about. I think what's really interesting in a multi-channel video distribution world is, and the way that we look at it is, it's really it's a highway. It's a clover leaf, right? It's this infinity loop that people are on. They're already on it. You don't have to push them there. They're there. Facebook pushed them there. YouTube pushed them there. That's how they work now. They move from one medium to another. They're motivated to go to that medium by different things. They're looking for different things when they go there. They're willing to pay or deal with certain interruptions in the experience differently. They're willing to consume content at longer lengths or shorter lengths. They have a different expectation of the format and the form of the content. And so for us, we need to understand that. And the subscription model is kind of this really interesting destination, right? That is the panacea, and it's a model that's been proven out. It got proven out in the 50s with magazines. They proved they can build niche content audiences, get them to pay for the subscription, get them to drive the content largely, interact, write letters to the editor, and then they can sell massive amounts of advertising. And by the way, there are still magazines doing it. Cosmopolitan is a great example of magazines just still killing it in this space, right? So the model we know works. When you moved that model to the cable side, you lost some of the niche. You lost some of the narrow casting that the niche gave you. And the nice thing about digital is you can recapture it. Right. But you have to sort of build a product that recognizes along the infinity loop, there's an opportunity to address the audience differently. You have to give them the right product with the right content. The cost of goods sold, to an extent, you need to seamlessly build that into your production process so that you are on the way through doing your production, creating all those assets in those different ways that talk to one another, cross-promote, play into the ways that people are motivated and triggered to be motivated to come back to your other properties. And the industry data shows people consume more content, not less, almost twice as much. And so if you take advantage of this, not only do you not cannibalize your audience, not only do you not lose money, not only do you reduce your total cost of goods sold because you're getting more content to more people, but you have a potential to almost double the actual ROI on your content production. But it isn't magic. You have to be really careful. You have to have a plan to drive people down the monetization funnel. You have to use all the different channels at your disposal and ask them, hey, on YouTube, it's a casual visitor. On Facebook, it's a casual visitor. Like, how do you convert that casual visitor to a more interested visitor? Right. How do you get them to pay a little more, spend a little more time, come to a first-party property? How do you get them to subscribe to get rid of the ads? And as you do that, if you're paying attention, and then how do you engage your creative production staff, whatever that content is, to take advantage of that, look at the analytics, understand who their audience is. Is it tween girls? Is it, people that play sports? Is it high school football players? Who are these audiences that you need to reach, that you can reach? How big are they? And how do you make it all part of the seamless production flow so that you can take advantage of every possible monetization strategy you can along that path? And the nice thing is we now have years of data we can look at. And we have the benefit of some of these larger, more successful brands, and they're showing us the way. And all we have to do is look at the data and follow the path, and then we can innovate and be innovative content producers, innovative product developers, and there's a huge opportunity, I think, for everyone in this space.
Oh, that was great. With that, Ben, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to questions. Do we have a mic, or maybe we don't need one? Okay, please do.
I think right now, we do have a sizable audience. We do have a sizable audience.
Nathan, you know what? I just recalled. I think I need to repeat the question so we get it on the video. So the question, in summary, for online video publishers was, do you use incentives and promotions to engage the audience, and how do you factor that in, or do you need to factor that in, obviously, into the cost?
Yeah. So, we do have, audience engagement budgets, of course. We do use some, but not that much, as I was going to say, previously. We do have sizable audiences on our sites. So, yes, we will, use a little bit of incentive, but we rely a lot on our, owned and operated channels.
The organic audience you already have. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes, please.
I have a couple questions for Titus, just very quickly. One, if you have an audience that's sort of dying, how are you chasing them over to digital delivery? That's the first one. The second is, would you mind detailing a little bit of your delivery back end? I mean, there's a lot of startup channels here that would be curious. You're a single genre, and somebody had to build this from scratch. Is it a build it or buy it, which was a phrase we heard in one of the other
All right, I'll summarize real quick. So the questions directed at Titus were, if you're chasing a dying audience, how do you actually get them to, I'm rephrasing, transition to digital delivery? And then can you detail some of the back end, because there's a number of startup channels here that would be interested in hearing about that.
Sure. So as I mentioned, we have benefited enormously from children or grandchildren of our audience in the process of dying, for their help in getting their parents or grandparents hooked up and aware of what's out there for them. To be honest, it is also a critical part of our cost base is our customer service. And we have very specifically trained and recruited customer service reps and skill sets to be able to deal specifically with this audience. And the fact that in a lot of cases, the barrier to that person enjoying their content is likely to be a very simple but unclear remote or piece of technology that they haven't been able to get to grips with. So we recognize that a support call with one of our customers might be a $20 or $30 investment on our part. The reality, though, is that once you've got somebody to understand both ends of an HDMI cable, to understand which is the Roku remote and which is the TV remote, they label them and they don't touch them. Mm-hmm. So the upside is you create loyalty in that demo in a way that you don't with a younger audience. They turn the TV on, and the thing that comes up is Roku, or Fire TV, or Apple TV. And when they press play, they're already in their app. They're already in Acorn TV, and they don't go anywhere else. Yeah, a lot of the time. I mean, we also saw a very interesting initiative pay off big time for us, which was we launched a gifting program. It's like you can give Acorn TV to somebody, and we can ship them a Roku at the same time. So the thing arrives, you're like, oh, this is all that TV I want to watch. How do I turn it on? Once we've spent the 35 or 40 minutes on the phone with them, they don't watch anything else. So you're creating a brand loyalty and identity because this is the space they want to be. The key piece to that, I think, for those in the audience who are interested in why niche is valuable, what they say to us is, this is great because I don't have to search for stuff I'm interested in. You've already done that. You've curated the stuff for me, chances are if I like this, I'll like the thing next to it in the carousel.
Yeah.
So they don't spend 45 minutes searching through Netflix and going, none of this looks like I want to watch it. So it is really about human investment. It's about that customer service component. To your second question, I came from Discovery where I ran the digital platforms team, building essentially an entire process for all of Discovery Communications video delivery for web. And that was a build organization. They owned it end to end. We built our own player, we built our own transcoding suites, we built our own metrics engines, we built everything. And to your point earlier, when you've got those kinds of resources, you do it because then you have absolute control over your experience with the end user, whether it's a direct customer or an indirect customer. And you get out of it exactly what you put in because you can tell the business just how well it worked. The day I arrived with RLJ Entertainment, I had a team of one, myself. And so the very, very quick decision I had to make then was which bits of it do I build and which bits of it do I buy? And the simplest way I can describe it is the very first decision I made was actually to throw out the billing engine we had. It wasn't actually, the biggest problem was not video delivery, it was the economics. Because if you can't bill somebody in an SVOD model in an effective way, it doesn't matter whether the rest of it's any good or not. So that was step one, was get the billing right. Step two was then to address the other fundamental piece of it, which was the video. And I went to Bright Cove. It's an organization I've worked with in many different jobs over many different years.
I didn't do that.
That was potential.
Yeah. Keep going, please.
And the reason for it was simply that I had done with Bright Cove over my time in other jobs nothing like what I was doing with RLJ Entertainment. But I knew, because of all of the challenges I had set them over those previous 10 years, that they could actually rise to the occasion. And I will say, we had 2 attempts at this prior to Bright Cove with other OVPs that didn't work. And it is simply to say that when you go from the short form world and video delivery of 5-minute clips, 15-minute clips, to suddenly saying, no, the average length of our content is an hour. Every single thing you're going to watch is at least 30 minutes and more likely to be 90. The technical challenge of that and requirement is very different from short form. It's very unforgiving, relatively. So that was obviously a piece I didn't want to be building unless I had a team of 30 engineers. So that was a very obvious outsourcing tool. With that goes a very clear and obvious CDN choice and prioritization of CDN video expertise. Everything else we put in AWS because I didn't want to be paying for it unless I needed it. But what I have done is I've built and architected all of the content APIs, all of the customer records and interactions, because that's the stuff that is most valuable to us as an organization to understand and know about, that I didn't necessarily get a perfect fit from an off-the-shelf product.
Thank you. That was a lot of detail and incredibly valuable. Unfortunately, we have to wrap because there's a coffee break. I will say this. If you join me with thanking our panelists, you can mob them afterwards because there's only coffee next.